The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
Well, what's up, Downers? Welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web. You know what it is. It's, of course, The System is Down, where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics like conspiracies, politics, and religion. And if you're new here, of course, go find the person who invited you, give him a big hashtag #MeToo, slap on the rear, and a kiss on the mouth from you and from me, because I appreciate you being here, and I think you're going to enjoy it. I really do. And you know why I think that? Because today's conversation is my little chat with a man known as Jamie Shoop, the first man ever diagnosed and legally considered non-binary in the United States. He has since changed his mind and realized the error of his ways, if you will, and now he's transitioning back into manness. So it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed, especially the whole idea, which I've talked about on the show before, where if you're a man who doesn't fit into the quote-unquote man box, you know, it's okay. You can be a weird man. It's fine. It's fine. It doesn't mean you're a woman. I'm a weird man. I'm sitting here with a cat on my lap if you're watching on video. I've got my nails painted and all sorts of flamboyant quirkiness about me, and that's just fine. I know nothing about cars. I care nothing about sports. But so be it. I prefer cats over dogs. You know, some of us are just a little odd. But still got my man cave sign lit up behind me because I am a man. And James is a man. A man who had a mental disorder. So, if your panties are not in a wad already, you can head on over to the TSID store and buy your own pair of pre-wadded panties ready to go for you for this conversation. This is not a conversation of hate or bigotry or whatever, paranoia, or I always like the term phobia. Phobia. If you think that something is just wrong, you must be afraid of it, right? I'm not afraid of it. I just think that you're wrong. I'm sorry. Men are men and women are women, and women don't have penises. It's just a painful fact of life. Less painful than chopping it off, though. So we're going to get into that conversation here in just a minute. But before we do, I got to give some shout-outs. It's been a while since I've given shout-outs to people in the Downers Club, and we've got some new people who have joined recently. If I have already read your name before, I apologize. I take too long reading these names off, and so they kind of pile up. That's fine. That's a good problem to have. But if you get your name read twice, you're welcome, and you're welcome. But the latest members of the Downers Club who have joined are Cole Euchre, Melina Lee, Daniel Jostkin, Chris Spangle of We Are Libertarians, Meat Eater, Bruce Wilkie Jr., Stephen Hartman, Remzo Martinez, and Good People Doing Good. Oh, and John Odermatt. I don't remember if I read his name off before or not, but if I have, John, you're welcome. So, that if you're not familiar, that's for the Downers Club. That's what supports the show and helps it keep growing and getting bigger and better and more beautiful every single week, getting on these bigger guests, more interesting guests like James Shoop. So if you'd like to support the show, if you'd like to get multiple bonus episodes of the show every single week, when I say multiple, it's been single digits or single numbers as of late, just because it's been a busy month. But if you'd like to get bonus episodes of the show every single week, always make sure you've got something to get you through the week over at the Downers Club. You can join by going to patreon.com/The System is Down and signing up for as little as a cup of coffee a month. That is $5 per month. And go do that. Be a part of this family, this weird collective family that we are. Also, I'm working on a documentary. I won't dig into it too much, but it's about the moon landing and the moon landing hoax theories and why people are so quick to judge people for their beliefs. So, I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of the show. Let's get into this now, what you're here for. The meat and potatoes, my conversation with James Shoop. former Jamie Shoop. Let's get weird. My guest today, according to Wikipedia, and we know how that goes, is retired U.S. Army soldier, former transitioning individual, and the first person in the U.S. to obtain legal recognition for non-binary gender status, James, formerly Jamie Shoop. James, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Thanks for giving me the time. Your story is quite a fascinating one. I just came across it about a week ago, and I hit you up because I think it's really an important one to share. Here on this show, I try to not take anything like super politically. I have kind of a libertarian stance on this topic in particular. So this isn't about left versus right. This is about you and your personal story. And however that plays out, it will. But I like to, typically we start at the beginning, just getting people's backgrounds and their childhood and stuff like that, just to kind of get a picture and a window of the person, even if it doesn't play into their story that we're going to be talking about. But I feel like for yours, it plays a little bit more into it probably than a lot of guests that I have on. So let's just start there. Let's just walk through the whole experience. What was your childhood like growing up?
Okay, so I was born in Washington, D.C. I don't have a lot of memories, of course, of the super early years. Mm-hmm. Around probably age 4, we moved to Rockville, Maryland, and that was really like a white picket fence environment. It was a good, solid middle-class upbringing. But against that backdrop of the fairy tale upbringing, in the background, I had sexual abuse from a male relative that was going on.
Sure.
My father's side, it was like a long line of alcoholics. So there was a lot of alcoholism and violence associated with that in my upbringing there. Mm-hmm. And then probably around 12, 13 age range, my folks uprooted us and took us to Southern Maryland. And it was like going from the busy city suburbs out to farm country. Mm-hmm. My dad stopped working. We took a big hit on income. I mean, I went from, wearing Pumas and Levi's to working on a tobacco farm to get money for clothes.
Sure.
So it was quite the change. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So now moving forward, childhood, you had this unfortunate sexual encounter within the family. Do you feel like that lended itself into some of your mental issues later on in life?
Yeah, it definitely set the stage for me having PTSD now. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's not me saying that. I mean, most of the mental health professionals say the same thing about that as well.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a big time predictor of getting PTSD. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, were all the Wikipedia clarifications for setting up this, or were those all accurate? Retired U.S. Army soldier and all that stuff? Yes,
that part is true. They keep changing my page all the time. Yeah, that's the problem with that. But yeah, I served 18 years in the Army. Mm-hmm. I was honorably discharged. I was fairly highly decorated. Had a number of awards. No disciplinary actions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what led you into getting involved in the military and taking that route?
Most people in my situation claim they went into man up, fix their gender problem.
Sure.
At that age, I didn't even know I had a gender problem. Mm-hmm. It was purely an economic decision. The recruiters showed up at our high school probably when I was in like 11th grade. They gave us the ASVAB test. I scored far into officer territory. Once I did, the phone didn't stop ringing. I had a Marine recruiter showing up at my workplace. And with no options after graduation, I said yes.
Sure. So you were man enough to not only be accepted, but you were man enough to be accepted, in kind of a higher position, right?
Yeah, I mean, I went in as an enlisted person because,
Sure.
Of course, you have to have a college degree to go in as an officer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it was I was very well qualified for the job.
Sure. Yeah. So, what was your experience going through your military career? How long was that, and did any of that play into this whole gender issue as well?
Yeah, so I served 18 years. I retired 2 years early when I got hurt. So I would say in my mid-20s, I started getting pretty heavily into pornography. And the military culture is definitely invested in pornography. At least it was during that time.
Sure.
I mean, my first duty station in Germany, when I showed up, the base exchange was renting XXX movies. The barracks was full of porn magazines. The bookstores were selling porn. And when the internet became a thing, and I migrated to that and became heavily invested in it. Mm-hmm. After I did, I started cross-dressing, and I started thinking of myself as a woman.
Mm-hmm. So you were cross-dressing while still in active service?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a pretty scary thing to do because it's a death sentence for your career.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And did you have any like homosexual tendencies or anything like that during this time?
Excuse me, I got asthma. I was really messed up on that. Okay, so I had the male-on-male childhood sexual abuse,
right?
And I wrestled with, okay, is this why I think I'm a woman, because I can't process of being able to handle being gay? Yeah, I didn't know which direction to run on that, and the solution seemed to be bury it as much as possible, which really wasn't a solution either.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So as you're going through this, you're basically living this double life where you're this military officer, and you're also, living this side life where you're, hiding these feelings and these thoughts. Do you think that it was a mental illness at that time, or like what do you think? I know that there was the childhood experiences and everything, but was it just like the cycle of the pornography and the childhood experiences that led you to this confusion of identity?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely played a role. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. Ray Blanchard's work about autogynephilia.
Not particularly. I've heard the name, but no. Yeah,
I mean, okay, so Blanchard has this theory about the different types of transsexuals. And one type is that they want to become a woman because they are genuinely attracted to men. They're like physically attracted to men. Mm-hmm. And their ideal mate would be a straight man, and they're the woman in the relationship. Well, the other side of the autogynephilia thing fits my behavior to a T. Okay, I was attracted to the idea of myself as a woman, as strange as that may sound.
Sure.
It's kind of like I was turning the mirror inwards instead of outwards. Mm-hmm. Instead of me looking at a beautiful woman and going like, wow, I would like to sleep with that woman, I would look at her and say, I would like to be that woman. Sure. I would like to have her body, and I would like to have sex as that woman. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely turned into some mental health issues with that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Now, in leaving the military, you said that you were honorably discharged. What was the situation there?
Well, we did a battalion run one morning, and I was actually serving as the acting first sergeant at the time. And it was a really dumb move on the colonel's part. It was something like February. It was at Fort Drum, upstate New York. I think it was 1999. We did a battalion run. I'm running beside the formation, calling cadence. Hit a patch of ice. My feet just came out from under me. I landed on this arm and got a permanent injury. It was the end of my career.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. Crazy how that something as simple as that could take you out. So what was your life like transitioning back to civilian life?
Well, it happened quick because, here I was expecting to do another 2 years, and you start getting your life together for that transition, and versus bam. So it was a really lost time, and my PTSD was really coming apart at that time too, which is part of the reason I went ahead and left. Mm-hmm. I still had some pretty decent duty performance, and people weren't really picking up on the mental health signals that I was giving off. Sure. But I had really went down the rabbit hole with PTSD by that point. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I left Fort Drum, I was so bad off, my wife drove us out of there. I couldn't even drive a vehicle really anymore.
Okay.
And I floundered around for a while. 6 months later, I finally got a job as an IT technician. Yeah.
So at what point in all of this did you said your wife, at what point did you get married? Was that during the military experience?
Yeah, that was 1987.
Okay.
Yeah, I met her at Fort Knox.
Gotcha. All right. So you leave the military. You've got PTSD. You said that you had you feel like you showed some signs of mental disorder or PTSD, that type of thing. What do you feel like were some of the signs that lead you now to thinking that you had that at the time and that other people kind of overlooked?
Panic attacks, anxiety attacks. Yeah, I mean, I was doing things like when I was driving the car and I would get to a stop sign, I would have to put the car in park because I would fear that I would black out. Yeah, I was having extreme anxiety attacks, having a lot of depression issues. The base shrinks had put me on antidepressants. Yeah, there was a lot of warning signals going on.
Yeah. So take us forward into the real issue here. At what point did you decide, that you're a man born in the wrong body or a woman born in the wrong body, or however you put that?
That's where it starts getting really crazy. So I had basically like a lost decade. I left the Army in 2000, and 2010, I after I won 100% disability rating with the VA, I bought a pretty expensive house for my income. It was like $365,000. And I got into a big spat with the builder about defects in the house. And I was all doped up on psych meds. I was taking Xanax and psychotropic stuff. I like Sapphiris, all sorts of weird things. And when the builder wouldn't fix the house, I started destroying it.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, have you ever seen Pacific Heights with Michael Keaton?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, I mean, I dug up the yard. I ripped apart rooms. I threw things in the yard. I mean, this is like a community with a strict HOA and things like that.
Sure.
I mean, I became like a literal terrorist with and seriously went down the rabbit hole. It's a wonder the cops didn't kill me.
Yeah.
I had numerous run-ins with law enforcement.
Did you ever get incarcerated or anything like that during this time? Or
luckily, no. Like I said, they showed up at the house numerous times with me going at it with the neighbors. But it was kind of an interesting situation because in St. Mary's County, not long before that, another veteran had been shot by a Maryland State Police sniper in a standoff. And I think probably the only reason I didn't get in trouble was because they didn't want to go through the negative publicity of that again.
Sure.
It certainly wasn't because my behavior wasn't bad enough.
Sure.
I mean, I was walking around the house with an assault rifle and a Glock.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And your wife was, where was she at during all of this episode?
She had a full-time job at the time.
Okay. So she was just, she was busy, but she stuck it out. She was still with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I give her a lot of credit for everything that she's put up with. So anyway, I proceeded to destroy this house in the yard, and I eventually got sued for $3.5 million by the builder.
Wow.
And we went to court. Both of us had merits in our case, and the builder agreed to buy the house back, and I just left. We got in the car and we spent 6 months. She quit her job because she was scared to let me out of her sight because I was so unhinged at the time.
Sure.
We spent 6 months living in hotels, and I ended up in a cabin in Western Maryland, way up in the woods. No TV, just using a hotspot to get internet. and I got on Google and started researching mental health, and eventually stumbled into gender dysphoria and transgenderism. I kind of put two and two together and said, okay, well, you've got the cross-dresser problem and you've got all these mental health problems. So I self-diagnosed myself as a woman.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Was your wife aware at the time that you were interested in taking part in cross-dressing and stuff like that, or was that still behind closed doors?
She knew about it, but she didn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So when I did it in the military, it was like, okay, you're doing that in this locked room over here, and it's not part of my life. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, so you basically discovered the whole idea of transgenderism in your attempt to find the answer to your own mental issues, and like you were looking for, a way out of this current mental problem, which was the depression and the anxiety and PTSD and that type of thing, that brought you into this idea of transgenderism being the solution to that?
Yeah, I mean, all the literature on the internet was pointing that this would help your mental health. I mean, there was even an article written by Dr. Norman Spack, the quote, the godfather of puberty blockers, that transition in hormones would even cure bipolar disorder.
Really?
So yeah, I mean, I went into this seeking a cure for my mental health.
Yeah. So they think that transitioning. Unpack that a little bit more. They think that transitioning is a cure for bipolar disorder. They think that the reason that you might be bipolar is because what? Because you have this disassociation from your physical makeup, or what?
Yeah, it's a combination of the disassociation, the quote being trapped in the wrong body, that people aren't accepting you, and that if you can just come out and be accepted as who you are and align your body with the one in your mind, then all these problems go away. That's what is sold in this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And did you tell your wife about you want to be completely the opposite gender at the time, or how did that conversation go?
I found this one compelling essay written by a psychologist named Ann Vitale on the internet. And basically, Vitale warned in the essay that if I didn't do something about this, that I would end up as this bitter old man who just regretted never fixing my problems.
Sure.
So I had my wife read that essay. And then after she read it, I threatened her. I was like, okay, you either let me become a woman or I'm going to shoot myself in the head. So she didn't really have a lot of choice in the matter.
Sure. And
yeah.
Were you speaking with any therapists or anything at the time to get through these issues?
No, it was all self-diagnosed.
Okay, gotcha. And so where'd you go from there? Just continue, I suppose.
So after I became obsessed with being a woman and becoming a woman, I made an appointment with a nurse practitioner. And she had even though she was a nurse, she had the ability to write prescriptions. So she had never met me before in her life. I downloaded documents from a VA hospital about what prescriptions she should give me. I showed up to the appointment and I was like, okay, here's the stuff from the VA about how to turn me into a woman. And if you don't give me hormones, I'm going to buy them off the internet. She gave me hormones that day.
Wow. That's all it takes,
yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean, she should have put me in the psych ward.
Right.
Instead, she wrote me a prescription.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, we're basically talking about a mentally unhealthy person, like a broken brain trying to diagnose itself and fix itself, which doesn't typically work out. And so after that, you transitioned. Does that include just hormones, or does that include lifestyle and any surgical procedures or anything like that?
Well, it began with hormones. I immediately started dressing as a female, at least at the house at first. I jumped into it thinking I was going to get surgeries because it was just sold at, again, as the package was, all I had to do was switch from testosterone to estrogen, get my penis flipped into a vagina. Then I'm the same as every other woman. Yeah. That's kind of the fantasy that's sold to you, and that's what you jump into.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never did go through with any of the surgeries, thankfully.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I find it the surgery is horrifying. Like I said, I'm a libertarian, and my personal stance is if you're an adult, screw up your body however you want. But the not very well known fact that your body will continually try and heal that wound, and you have to use a device to keep your quote unquote front hole open is a horrifying thing. But thank God you didn't quite take it to that extreme. But sorry to keep going back to it. Your wife, are you guys still together? I should ask first.
Yes,
Okay.
we're doing very well, amazingly.
Impressive. Very impressive.
It's all it's her. I mean, she deserves a whole lot of credit.
Oh
for
yeah,
this.
absolutely. She should probably be the one being interviewed. But so during this whole process of you taking the estrogen and everything, how is her family? How is her like lifestyle changing? Because of course, from outside, like the people that you guys love and like your friends and family and things like that. What were the responses to this process?
Well, at first we didn't say anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but I literally turned her into what they call a situational lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
She became a lesbian whether she liked it or not.
Sure.
Because, yeah, I mean, especially once I legally changed my identity.
That's love right there.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not her true self.
Sure.
But like I said, we basically just spent a couple years hiding it. It caused a lot of problems that I regret. I missed my daughter's college graduation because of it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah, I didn't want to show up as a woman and have all the attention on me instead of her graduating.
Sure. So the process for like I said at the beginning, you were the first legally recognized quote unquote non-binary gender. Why don't you walk through the process of what went down there?
Okay, so I went from the cabin in Western Maryland to the nurse who gave me the hormone prescription. A couple months later, she fired me as a patient.
Okay.
Yeah, she realized how bad she screwed up, and
she wanted to distance herself from it, or what?
Yeah, so she just dumped me.
Mm-hmm.
So then I ended up in Pittsburgh because that was like 3 hours to the north. There was quote affirming care there. Mm-hmm. I became a female in Pittsburgh. I lived there a year. Had a lot of bad experiences trying to be a woman and not being accepted as a woman.
Sure. And
I left within a year and went to Portland.
What were some of those experiences that you had during the process?
Let's see. I came home from a therapy appointment one day in female clothing, and a neighbor stopped their car and proceeded to cuss me out, call me all sorts of things. I was ejected from a bathroom, female bathroom in a major business, and caused a big public spectacle. I didn't integrate very well into the transgender community, even though I tried to. I couldn't match my ideologies to theirs.
Yeah.
I mean, I was starting to see that their idea of being a woman was all about just makeup and clothing and wigs and femininity.
Stereotypes.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So after a year in Pittsburgh, I gave it up and I went to Portland. Okay. And I continued living as a woman throughout the whole time. Well, we'll go back to Pittsburgh a bit. Mm-hmm. My mental health was supposed to be improving because of this transition. It wasn't. It was getting worse. Mm-hmm. I spent extensive time at the VA in Pittsburgh. They kept me heavily doped up on psych drugs. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's like notes in my medical records from the VA that says like, Dr. So-and-so, I saw Jamie stumbling down the hallway today. Where I was all doped up on Klonopin and Buspirone and all sorts of psych drugs. So I wasn't getting any better. I was getting worse.
Sure.
And I went to Portland. By late 2015, the whole thing was falling apart. Just as you mentioned, I realized that my transition was about stereotypes, mm-hmm. that I wasn't a woman, and I was left with the question of how do I get myself out of this mess? And that's where the non-binary piece came in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, to take it back a little bit, some of these issues that you had with the transition, with people calling you out, your neighbors, people in public and stuff like that, it wasn't that convincing, I take it. They were seeing through the mask of mental instability that you had on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was basically a man in a dress.
Okay.
And I don't think people should be punished for saying that because it was the truth. They were speaking about what they were seeing.
Right. Well, they shouldn't be like your neighbor shouldn't be cussing you out on the street, but perhaps the bathroom situation is a different issue. Were you doing like wigs and makeup, that type of thing, or just?
Yeah, I was either wearing a wig or a female chemotherapy scarf.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I was probably doing more of an androgynous appearance a lot of times than I was like a hyper feminine. I
Yeah.
didn't really care for the hyper feminine role. Yeah. I mean, I understood the value in it, but I didn't care for it.
So was that you said that you had some pushback from the transgender community? Was it just because you were wanting to be somewhere in this wishy-washy middle of I don't want to be like the over effeminate, but I don't want to be a man? What was kind of the reason for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it with that. It was because I wasn't willing to go like be super feminine all the time.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, well, we don't really want to hang around with you because you draw attention to, you look like a man in a dress, so we can't have you around. That sort of thing. Yeah.
Sure. And so you got legally recognized as non-binary. What was the court process and all the stuff that went into making that even a possibility?
That's okay. So, of course, it wasn't legal, and I had the daunting task of figuring out how to do it. So I reached out to the ACLU. They told me no. Or actually, the ACLU didn't even answer me. Lambda told me no, and I started searching around for private lawyers. I did an interview with a female attorney, and it didn't go well. I took my headscarf off during the interview, and I was like, so if I went into a female locker room and took a shower, what do you think would happen? And she just freaked. She's like, I would even represent you if you did that. So,
Right.
I mean, it's like even she was telling me that she viewed me as a male.
Right.
So she was out. I eventually found the attorney who was instrumental in winning gay marriage in Oregon, and I hired him. It was a financial arrangement. It was like, okay, Jamie, I'm $350 an hour. How many hours do you want? and yeah, so I hired him. I gave him $1,000 down, agreed to pay him $500 a month if this turned into a lengthy court case. And instead, it turned out to be really simple. All he did was he took an Oregon sex change form, he sucked it in his computer, he took Photoshop, he edited out where it said male and female, he typed in non-binary, and he electronically filed it with the court.
All right.
And so I, I mean, it was that simple. And so, he's just sitting back, and I'm kind of freaking out, and I'm running around getting letters from the doctors. I asked two of my doctors to write me sex change letters to non-binary, and it was just done over secure messaging, and they agreed to do it.
Yeah.
They didn't interview me about it or anything. They just wrote letters. And so I'm telling him, look, I'm worried. I'm getting these letters and everything. And so he shoots me an email back, and he's like, Jamie, just relax. The judge has a transgender child. So basically, he was telling me that the case was won before we even went to court. And sure enough, we showed up on the morning of June 10th. The judge didn't ask me a single question, didn't ask for my doctor's letters, and just rubber stamped the landmark court decision.
Wow.
Within minutes. I mean, I walked out of court as a famous person.
Sure. Yeah. What was the reason for pushing for this non-binary status? Just because you didn't feel like either this or that? You just felt like you're something that cannot be defined, or what?
No, I needed an escape hatch from being a female.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I even wrote that in my correspondence to the two doctors that I was like, look, my sex change to female was a failure. I don't look anything like a female. Everybody's been pumping me full of hormones for years. This hasn't went anywhere. So will you let me become non-binary instead?
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I mean, there was some other elements where, I thought about committing suicide at the time.
Sure.
Because, I mean, it was like, do I suck it up and go back and tell everybody that I'm not really a female and go back to male?
Right.
Or, again, how do I get myself out of this mess? And there's a lot of people who end up in that exact situation that I was in. So I figured I would be helping them by creating the non-binary space, because it's impossible to change your sex.
Right.
I mean, it's a more plausible answer that you could possibly be a mixture of the two. Rather than you're just making the leap all the way over to the other side. So that so there were some noble intentions in it.
Sure. Gotcha. So, actually, one second. My cat is knocking on the door. I'm going to let him in real quick. We can take a quick second.
Hey guys, this is Dan's wife, Kayla. I just wanted to interrupt this podcast to let you know that he puts a lot of work into it for currently no monetary profit. And he has a family to feed. To do so, he runs his own media business called Goulash Media. Dan has a crazy creative brain that makes him uniquely able to take your project, whatever it may be, and make it the full package. So whether you're in need of graphic design, logos, branding, commercials, wedding videos, podcast jingles, music production, music videos, merchandise, websites, pictures, or what have you, contact Dan and he'll seriously make you look and sound awesome. For more information, just go to goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where Dan caters to the little guy with the big vision.
So you're officially you're non-binary. You're essentially nothing. You have no category. How long were you considered non-binary, and what was like the reaction from the press? Like you said, you're basically famous within the matter of the time it takes to rubber stamp a made-up piece of paper. What happened after this?
How do I even put this? I was just like sucked in for the ride. Mm-hmm. So I went from being a nobody to, I had been in the New York Times. I wrote an essay for the New York Times as a trans woman. Mm-hmm. So that got me a little bit of fame prior to, but it was mainly within the trans community. Yeah. Like I would show up at the community center and people would be like, "Hey, I seen your essay in the New York Times." But, no civilian person otherwise ever said anything about the essay because nobody had ever seen it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I went from being, from that sort of thing to, being in Time, to being in People, again in the New York Times, the Sydney Morning Herald, Der Spiegel in Germany. I had reporters hanging out in my Facebook feed waiting for me to say something. Right. I mean, it was that kind of fame. I didn't know what to do with that. And it went on really heavy for the first couple months. It gradually tapered off. But as the process played out of putting the X marker on the driver's license, which took about 18 months. Every time something would happen with the Oregon government doing like a press conference about the progress of it, that sort of stuff would put me in the news again. Mm-hmm. So I basically stayed in the news for 18 months until July of 2017.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I mean, in the background though, I have to say my life was kind of falling apart.
Sure.
November 2016, I left Portland. We got in the car. We threw our stuff in a storage unit, got in the car, went to Nevada. I went to a JCPenney store, bought all male clothing, and started living as a male again. Mm. Yeah.
So you just kind of got fed up with the lifestyle, and you just said, "Yeah, I'm just gonna quietly brush this aside and go back to the easy life of living like what I was born as."
Yeah, I mean, I was still carrying around the non-binary identity.
Sure.
But in the background, I was back to living as a male. I mean, it really bothered me, the stuff that went down in Portland, too, about the riots at the election, that people's setting the city on fire, mm-hmm. the downtown area, people hitting occupied cars with baseball bats and all that stuff. I mean, I never went back to Portland after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you decide, this isn't for me. I'm moving back to. What was like the mental process? Did you get mental help to come to this conclusion that maybe this was never a thing, or maybe I'm doing something completely wrong here, or what was the process for coming to that conclusion?
No, I never did go into therapy about it. It just continued to fall apart on its own. Mm-hmm. Just like I went into the female transition believing it would help my mental health.
Yeah.
I did the exact same thing over again with the non-binary thing. And I saw that once again, this didn't fix me any more than the female transition did. Right. But I did continue to stay on hormones, which caused a host of problems. I ended up in the emergency room with swollen legs at one point. I have had kidney problems with it. It's messed up my bone density. And it ultimately landed me in the psych ward in November and December of 2017. And part of that was the the hormones, and part of it was the stress of this whole thing finally falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Why were you still on the hormones during this time if you were kind of getting out of the lifestyle of it?
On one hand, I was getting out. On the other hand, I was still feeding the delusion. I still had one foot in the door.
Okay.
That I, could be happier with a female body.
Yeah.
And that the hormones would help me. And there is one situation where they actually did help me. When my testosterone is knocked down, then I don't have the urge to cross-dress anymore. I mean, my problem with autogynephilia goes away when you cut off my testosterone. And that was kind of a self-realization too, that this isn't, quote, making me a female. This isn't what it feels like to be a female. Mm-hmm. The chemical castration was actually killing my sexual fetish problem.
See. So what do you think the reason is for if I'm understanding this correctly, you think that the testosterone actually is what caused you to have feelings of wanting to cross-dress and that type of thing? What do you think the reason is for that?
It's probably in the mental health side of the house.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just redirecting it into bad places instead of dealing with it properly.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. So you move on from there. Mm-hmm. You've basically been the social darling of the trans community because you are the person who succeeded at being this this nothing, this non-gender whatever, middle of the road, mm-hmm. The thing that they're preaching about. Change your mind and you move back. What happens after that?
Yeah, when I officially went back to male on January 25th of 2019, nobody wanted to talk about it.
Sure.
but we have to back up with this because in 2017, I basically got excommunicated from the trans community. Around this time that President Trump came out with the transgender ban. Mm-hmm. It was common for the media to reach out to me for quotes. Mm-hmm. And when they did, I was like, well, I agree with the president. And everybody was like, what? So the minute I said something negative, and I was also becoming vocal about that I didn't agree with transitioning children. Mm-hmm. I had also spoken up that, I didn't think surgeries were a good idea for this. Part of the non-binary thing was hopefully where people could exist without surgeries and not feel compelled to get them. Because when they put a female label on you, there's a lot of pressure to, look like a female.
Right.
And that it drives people to get surgeries. I mean, like, how do you say this? Women talk about like they don't want penises in their bathrooms. Mm-hmm. So if you're allowing people to become females, and women are giving them this message about, no penises in the bathroom, they feel very compelled to get surgeries. Yeah. And that's something that the non-binary identity was useful for because it shielded them from that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it was like everything was falling apart.
Yeah. So what's to backpedal a little bit, what's your stance? You said your stance on no transgender individuals in the military, especially it's funny because you have, both sides of that. You've been down the trans route, you've been down the military route, and you can see, that it wasn't a terrible decision for the president to make. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Okay, so I was a senior enlisted leader. I was a sergeant first class when I retired. I served in all sorts of positions. I was a platoon sergeant. I even did a little bit of first sergeant time. I ran a maintenance shop the size of a super Walmart when I retired. So I've got a lot of experience with deploying soldiers and leading troops. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what the president did was he didn't actually do a transgender ban. He banned gender dysphoria. Mm-hmm. And there's a big distinction. Gender dysphoria is back to this thing of, you're born in the wrong body, you demand to transition and be identified as something else. Right. That's what he banned. You can still be in the military as long as you agree to serve as your birth sex. they don't care what you're doing in your off-duty time. You can identify as an elephant if you want, as long as you show up, you do your job, you deploy. You take a physical fitness test as your biological sex.
Mm-hmm.
Military is good with that now. So, the president's really getting a bad rap on this.
Yeah.
And, it's funny. I talk about most media articles about the transgender community. The first thing they throw out there is like the 41% suicide rate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny when the same media talks about transgender military service, the suicide rate suddenly disappears from the article.
Sure.
Yeah, so they're kind of like talking out of two sides of their mouth there.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean, I got to see the carnage in the trans community about how bad people have, how bad their mental health is in most situations. Nobody's trans without mental health issues. It's comorbid. They're in lockstep with one another. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, so the president did a good thing with what he did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing about this whole issue is that if you say that it's a mental health issue, people take offense to it and they act like you're a terrible person or you're a transphobe or whatever. It's like if somebody sees themselves as other than what their biological makeup is, then that lovingly is a mental health issue, and that's okay. Like it's not like I'm afraid of you or I think that you're gross or anything like that. It's like it should be handled as, if you have this issue, let's talk about it. Let's see if there's another path other than chopping your penis off, and see if there's a way through this where you can be happy in your life. So, what's kind of your take on? Well,
before we do that, let me throw another piece out there about the trans military service.
Sure.
Okay, so I picked up a number of hats while I was in the military. I was an equal opportunity officer. I was also a master fitness trainer. Which basically meant I oversaw the physical fitness testing and the physical fitness program for the units that I was in. Okay, so now if somebody like me were to become a female in the military and I take a physical fitness test, I would now be in the female standards, which were a lot lower.
Sure.
It's way easier to max a physical fitness test as a female than it is as a male. Mm-hmm. Where I'm going with this is people such as myself, non-commissioned officers, we got evaluation reports, and on the backside is the physical fitness thing. And if you get a maximum score, you get an excellent rating on your non-commissioned officer evaluation report. Mm-hmm. And when you go to like your records appear before centralized boards and even the regular promotion boards, you've got a leg up on the promotion system. So I mean, this became a very fundamental issue. I mean, there's nothing more sacred in the military than the promotion system. And trans women, just like they are in sports, were getting a serious leg up. So nobody wants to talk about that, but it's true.
Right. Yeah, and you also brought up the issue of children being allowed to or being even encouraged to go through these hormone therapies and stuff like that. And people like Owen Benjamin are being, they're having their careers taken away from them for putting that standpoint out there. And I don't feel like that's too much of a stretch to say, maybe if you're an adult, you're fully formed and you decide to mutilate yourself, then that's fine. But maybe just let the kids, go through puberty and figure out their life before allowing them to chop body parts off or anything like that. But,
yeah, but there's even issues on this adult thing too.
Sure.
Okay, because they're not doing this and just like, so it's not like I do this and then continue living as a male. Mm-hmm. They're doing this and quote using it as evidence to claim that they're females or claim that they're males. Mm-hmm. So it becomes much more in depth than that. Yeah.
Okay. So are you saying that I personally I think that I don't care if an adult wants to harm themselves as long as they're not harming somebody else. I don't encourage it by any stretch, but I think that they should be allowed to do it. Would you agree with that?
Again, when you're doing it to put yourself in the female locker room or the female bathroom, then you're doing harm.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm not scared to call out the harm with that.
Okay. Yeah. And so talk a little bit more about while you were still in the transitioning process, the wishy-washy, whatever it was, with you said that you got some pushback for speaking out on some of these things. That at that point, what was some of the pushback, even on like the child stuff? Are they like doubling down on this type of thing? Are they really going to that extreme of if a child, an 8-year-old, thinks, "Hey, I like the color pink," let them take hormones, let them ruin their biological makeup, or what?
Yeah, I mean they do keep going lower and lower age wise. You know, the dirty secret with this whole transition business. Okay, I've got a link to one of the trans surveys. And they asked the question like of how often do people know that you're transgender? And only 21% of the trans community out of thousands of people who took the survey were able to answer never. So basically 79% of the trans community has never achieved a convincing appearance through surgeries and hormones.
Sure.
Yeah. So back to the dirty secret. The only way to get a better cosmetic appearance is to get kids younger and younger. The doctors, the endocrinologists have to grab them before they go through puberty. And the problem with that, of course, is once they do that, the kids never experience their natural puberty to snap out of it like they should. They're not given a chance to snap out of it. Then they go on to take hormones, and they're sterilized at that point.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, getting the natural hormones in their body, they say, I don't know, the numbers are all over the place, but you frequently hear like 85% of these kids will snap out of it. And they're saying that once they're put into these puberty blocker situations and they don't go through puberty, that 100% of them go on to transgender identities. Yeah, so that's how screwed up that is.
Right. Now you say the dirty secret, and I'm the conspiracist here, but do you think that there's like people talk about an agenda or that type of thing? Do you think that there's a plan, like, is there a bigger plan than just an individual feeling like a thing and being allowed to express themselves in that way? Do you think that there's more to it than that?
You know, there's different arguments on this. Some people use the word eugenics. Yeah, I mean, it's basically, you could claim the trans community is a pretty unwanted population.
Sure.
You know, there's the element of that sexual orientation is being fixed. You know, you're being made straight on these gender changes. That's what they do in Iran. And then you have the element of how lucrative it is to give puberty blockers. I mean, these are medications that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. You know, I've got a profile of Jazz Jennings on my transgender archives, and one of the links I saved was where they brought Jazz to the endocrinologist, this sort of like a public event they had, and they brought Jazz in to show Jazz off as almost like a product.
Right.
So you really have to question those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Yeah.
Creepy stuff. Now, after you got your legal status changed to non-binary, was that, I don't dig into this stuff all that much, so is that like a legal status that is available readily now, or do they have to go through a similar court process as you to obtain non-binary status?
Well, one of the things that's happened, I mean, supposedly, like, I think the Reuters article I seen recently said 11 states now. But so one of the things that's happened is the trans advocates have they've kind of like hijacked my non-binary thing, because when I did this, it was meant to that, you know, you could become non-binary. They've inserted bills about self-identification, that instead of just becoming non-binary as a trans person, you can also become male and female with no questions asked. You can basically become anything with no questions asked.
Right.
In places like Oregon, you just walk into the DMV, you sign a statement that your identity is true and correct, and they issue you a driver's license with either male, female, or non-binary. It's that simple now. But you know, the destruction to women with that is pretty horrific.
Yeah. So what do you think the issue is with that being, like, what kind of implications does this have on society if we're just allowed to quote unquote be whatever we feel like today or tomorrow or whatever. If it's signed off on, it's okay. What do you think the problem is with that?
Well, I mean, the obvious problem is women are doing all the suffering. Okay. When I go in a male bathroom, if a female to male comes in there, that doesn't scare me at all. It doesn't seem to scare any males that I know. There's nobody on the NFL is losing their job because a trans man took it. Right. But down at the local high school, the girls are getting walloped by males that identify as female. In some cases, they haven't even took hormones to knock down their testosterone, which, I mean, again, that's a double-edged sword. They take the hormones and they become sterilized. They don't take the hormones. They're even more powerful against the girls. Right. So then, back to I understand what it's like to be sexually abused and molested. A lot of that happens to females more often than it does males. Yeah. So a lot of females are carrying around sexual trauma, and now they have a male in their bathroom or their locker room, and they're just told to suck it up. Right. So that's the harm we're doing with this program. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So as you transition back into James, were you born as James or were you born as Jamie for your name?
I was born as James Clifford Shoop. Okay. And one of the big problems I had was the male uncle that was abusing me. Mm-hmm. His name was Clifford too. Okay. And my parents always called me either Clifford or Cliff, and it was kind of like ringing my bell every time I got called that name. I was reminded of the sexual abuse. Right. So when a LGBT organization offered to change my name as part of my gender transition, I jumped on it because I wanted to get rid of it. But I've recently realized that I need to face up with that and deal with it through therapy rather than run away and change my name. So I've reclaimed it.
Mm-hmm. So legally, you are now James Shoop again.
Well, it's in the. I filed a petition a couple days ago. Mm-hmm. I'm running around asking everybody now to call me James again, but yeah. Okay. I mean, I still have to get the judge to sign off on it.
Sure. So was it as easy to become a man again as it was to become a woman and a nothing? Like, is the process just a matter of a rubber stamp each time, or does it get harder and harder each time you change your mind?
Everything has been so beat down by this that mm-hmm. It's largely pretty easy. Sure. I've had trouble getting the Department of Veterans Affairs to change my diagnosis. They don't really want to admit they were wrong about what they diagnosed me with gender dysphoria instead of autogynephilia, which was a serious misdiagnosis. They don't want to fix that. Mm-hmm. But the VA is one of the organizations who wrote my sex change letter to non-binary. Mm-hmm. So they have been good about working with me. They wrote me another sex change letter back to male. I just took it around to the DMV, the Social Security Administration, all those sorts of places. And yeah, as you say, they rubber stamp it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To clarify, I don't personally know much about autogynephilia. What's the difference between that and gender dysphoria?
So gender dysphoria is framed as, again, it's the people who they feel like they're trapped in the wrong body. Okay. Gender dysphoria would be like me looking at my big hands, which are male hands, and going like, "Oh my God, I'm supposed to have smaller hands because I'm a female, and I'm not supposed to be bald because I'm a female, and my, I'm not supposed to have a penis because I'm a female." All those sorts of things are gender dysphoria. You have that psychological distress from the mismatch. But I think the doctors caused that. If the doctors would have honest conversations about who people are instead of lying to them, yeah.
So the difference between that and the other word, autogynephilia, I think you said.
Yeah.
What's the definition of that?
That is back to again where the it's more in the sexual fetish arena. Okay. Where you have the gay male who becomes a woman because they believe it can attract like a straight male relationship, and they'll get to play the part of the woman, and they're physically attracted to that male. And me on the other side of the house, where I had that mental image of myself as a woman. Mm-hmm. I was like attracted to my own self as a woman.
Sure.
Yeah, and so it was like, you know, I've had sex with men, mm-hmm. and it was like part of the autogynephilia thing for me was I wasn't attracted at all to their bodies. Right. I was only attracted to the sex act itself as a woman.
Okay.
So that's the difference between the two.
I see.
But none of it is more authentic than any other piece of it.
Right. So you feel like you were misdiagnosed with somebody who looks at themselves and sees a woman rather than somebody who just gets sexual pleasure from, you know, living out that fantasy, basically.
Yeah, but there's a broader sense of that. Okay, by telling me that I was a female, mm-hmm. they induced the gender dysphoria. Mm. When I showed up and said I think I'm a female, and they were like, "Yeah, you're really a female," they gave me the gender dysphoria, because at that point I was then in the wrong body, mm-hmm. and I also developed gender dysphoria at that point, which I didn't have a history of it in my childhood. I mean, you know, I fit the classic narrative where as a child I would have said, "Yeah, I felt different." And that seems to be the magic word that you show up to a therapist with and say, "Yeah, I feel different." And, "Oh, you're trans."
Whatever you want to be. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you, I think I heard in one of the other interviews that I watched of yours that you might be suing them for the misdiagnosis there. Is that the case or not?
Yeah, I've been asked not to speak about that, though.
Okay, sorry.
I'll have to. That's one of the few questions that I'm going to have to sidestep.
Okay.
But
yeah.
If
you want, I can cut out the question entirely from the interview afterwards, or if you don't mind. Okay.
No, it's fine, because I mean I did make that statement when I spoke to Benjamin Boyce. Okay. But let me say this before we move too far beyond the gender dysphoria thing. This stuff of putting these fake identities on people has profound effects. Mm-hmm. Okay, because I'm a male. I've been DNA tested as male. I did the Ancestry.com thing, and they came back, and I had my kid done. My wife got done. My parents got done, and the test says, I'm the father of my child, that I'm a male.
Right.
Okay, I've accepted that I'm a male, but you know what? I have breasts now. Mm-hmm. So now I'm a male walking around with breasts, even though they're not huge. I mean, if I take my shirt off, you could definitely see that I have breasts. Sure. So breasts don't belong on a male body. Mm-hmm. So now I have kind of like a gender dysphoria in an opposite setting, because I'm walking around with the wrong body parts on me as a male. Right. This is the kind of like psychological trauma that you end up with from this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there's anything in our culture and our society, like I've talked about this in the past on an episode, just the idea that people have to be in certain boxes. Like for me personally, I'm an artsy fartsy type of guy. I enjoy, I hate sports. I don't care about cars. All these things I don't fit into the quote unquote man box. So do you think that there's something in our society that is pushing men that don't fit into that mold away from? I think it kind of goes both ways, actually. Even if you are in that man box, it's being kind of demonized right now. And if you're outside of it, then you're being told that you're not a man, that type of thing. What do you think is going on in our society where men are kind of like, we don't know what to do with ourselves, it feels like, at this point in society?
That goes off in a whole bunch of different directions. But sure. let me do this with it. The trans community is sucking up a lot of lost people because of exactly what you're talking about. So the trans thing, the way this basically works, like somebody like me, like you might look at me and not see somebody feminine whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But my whole life, I've had this like internal mental image that I'm feminine, and that I possess like the stereotypical female traits. That's actually in the DSM as part of the gender dysphoria diagnosis. Mm-hmm. But no therapist ever got the book out and sat down and talked about that with me, which would have been helpful, because I would have realized that I was operating on stereotypes rather than reality.
Right.
And then you have a lot of people who, I believe I have autism. I think I am in the high functioning spectrum of autism.
Sure.
So I'm easily misled on this boundary thing. So basically, what the trans community is doing, people such as myself who believe they're feminine, or these females who believe they're masculine, yeah, they're literally getting sex changes because of this, because they don't, especially with the autism thing, they can't process how to fit themselves into society.
Right.
So they're operating off stereotypes, and they're getting sex changes as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so basically they've medicalized sex stereotypes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crazy. You read these articles with these kids getting the sex changes, and it's like you're just talking about. The kid doesn't like sports, gravitates towards Barbie dolls, prefers hanging out with girls. It's nothing but stereotypes.
Yeah, yeah, and I personally feel like our culture has. We talk about how open and accepting we are of people of all different types, but then like when it comes to boys who like more quote unquote stereotypical feminine things, we're just really quick to say, "Oh, you're wrong," and do it right. I don't know. I just have an issue with the whole idea that you can't be unique and different without being thrown into another box or make a new box or whatever. There's plenty of different types of men. It's okay to be a flamboyant man and not be gay or not be trans or not be anything. Maybe you just are that. It's just funny how our society is, as we try and be more inclusive, we seem to be more exclusive and more pushing people into unhealthy camps rather than just accepting them as they are.
Yeah, I mean, it was in some ways it was easier when I was growing up, mm-hmm. because when I was a teenager, Kiss was running around in makeup, right. and David Bowie, and you had all these gender bending rock stars. Mm-hmm. A lot of those folks don't exist anymore.
Sure.
It's a lot different landscape now, and I think it is harming these young people with that.
Yeah, quite possibly. So after you became James again, you became, you're still in the process of that. You are accepting of that you're a man. What has been kind of the response from the transgender community and the people that were praising you for being so open and honest with yourself before? Like, how are they responding to you now?
There's been a few op-eds written against me, but largely they're like the whole left side of the media. It's pretty much silence, sure. waiting to see what happens. Waiting to see how big this explosion is, how much damage I do by walking back my court victory.
Right.
Yeah.
So they just kind of want to ignore it until it becomes something that they actually have to deal with and have to talk about. They don't want necessarily your story to get out there because it kind of flies in the face of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, because let's frame it this way: if state number 12 is talking about or considering putting a non-binary identity on the driver's license, mm-hmm. is it better to have me on the front page of the newspaper saying the whole thing is fake, or is it better to pretend that I don't exist?
Right.
Yeah. So that's where we're at.
Sure. So do you think that there's legitimacy to transgenderism, I suppose you would call it? Do you think that it's all just a mental health issue, or where do you take that?
The whole thing is a fraud.
Okay.
Have you ever heard the legal definition of legal fiction?
Only from you in other interviews, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, all right, so like legal fiction would be, let's say you had two parents and they give you up for adoption. Mm-hmm. Another family takes you. They change your birth certificate. Give you a new name to theirs. They just integrate you into their family as you were born into that. That's what's being done with this. That's was done with me. My whole past was rewritten. Right. My birth certificate was changed to say that I'm a female. My name was changed. The name change was court sealed. Mm-hmm. Like I said, everything was rewritten and done. The whole thing is legal fiction across the board, and that's the same. It was true for me, and it's true for them. So the whole thing is a fraud. I don't have anything nice to say about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what do you say to people that are, I mean, you have to be able to sympathize and understand people who are going through the same mental issues, the same depression and dark places that you've gone in your life that pushed you into that place. What do you say to that type of person? Are you against them or are you against the idea?
I'm against the damage they're doing.
Yeah.
Because they are continuing to suck more and more people in. When you're advocating this, you've got the blood of it on your hands. So until you're willing to tell the truth about yourself, you're guilty of harming others. So, yeah. Now, do I have some empathy for them? At the same time, I do. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage them to have some honest conversations, those alone in the dark moments, and get to the bottom of why they believe what they do. Mm-hmm. One of the big things with this is this thing really is like a cult.
Sure.
They tell you what to think, who to hang around with. I mean, your life is under their control, and the only way you're going to snap out of this is to separate yourself from that. Start getting a bigger picture of what's going on. Expose yourself to more ideas. Learn about the definitions of mental illness. Learn about sex stereotypes, mm-hmm. and that will lead you out of this thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what does the future for James Shoop hold? What are you planning on doing with this new knowledge, with this new identity, with where does your path go from here? Do you hope?
Well, the number one thing right now is just like working on my mental health.
Sure.
I mean, this is like literally, like I said, like I feel like I've just spent the last 6 years in Jonestown, sure. and made it out on the last plane. So mm-hmm. I'm like trying to put my mental health together as much as possible. I'm trying to repair the relationship with my wife as much as possible, even though we still get along well. I've done a lot of damage to her.
Sure.
I've obviously harmed my daughter in the process too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so I've got that piece of it. And then, as you say, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And there's going to be definitely some activism to help stop this spread of gender ideology, because I don't think it's good for anybody. Sure. And I'm also working on my faith. I went to church Sunday, which I call it the first time. I went as a kid, but as a kid, I got beat to go. Mm-hmm. So I actually, voluntarily walked into a church on Sunday, and I've started to explore faith and embrace it and use it as a method to heal. Yeah. So those are the things I'm doing moving forward.
Nice. So, is your daughter still at home, or is she out of the house? Like, are you past that point of childhood, or where's she at?
Yeah, she's on her own now.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
How? I know you said it before, but I don't recall. How recently did you decide to just go full back to detransition?
January 25th, 2019 was the official day that I went to the DMV and said, give me mail back on my driver's license.
Okay, so it's a fairly recent thing.
Yeah.
And are you taking steps to, maintain, or, I mean, obviously some people could criticize like, oh, what's he going to be tomorrow? Is he going to be a cat or a woman, or who knows? Like, it's been a roller coaster of a life. So,
it's interesting you mentioned that, because those folks, they want me to fail.
Sure.
They don't want me to get better, because if I fail, that validates them. Mm-hmm. But if I succeed, it doesn't validate them.
Sure.
But I'm going to succeed because of that. It's interesting, when I asked the VA to change my diagnosis, I figured they would bring me back into therapy and work on that.
Yeah.
Instead, they kicked me out. They told me to go see a therapist outside of the VA.
Why is that?
Yeah, I have that same question for them.
All right.
So I don't have this appointment until April 1st. Uh-huh. And I'm going to work on getting my mental health together, getting my diagnosis changed. Getting my diagnosis changed will be helpful.
Yeah.
Because once it's in my records that, I was misdiagnosed, I don't have gender dysphoria, what I have is a transvestism problem, mm-hmm. That will help clue doctors into, hopefully, if I have any bad behavior in the future. Yeah. That instead of giving me hormones and affirmation, that if necessary, they'll put me in the psych ward. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen. But yeah, I mean, I'm hoping for the best with the future.
Yeah.
But as you say, like I said, I mean, I've only been off hormones for 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
So I'm getting into this arena where my testosterone is coming back, and yeah, I've got a lot of work to do in the future.
Gotcha. Do you have any plans for, books or anything like to document the story outside of these podcast appearances, or what's the plan there?
I had started writing my autobiography. My writing is really weird because it comes and goes. It's like, I guess it's probably correct that I have a bipolar diagnosis, because I can go into that mode and I can write some amazing things. Yeah. And then when that mode passes, then I'm just a complete idiot. It's hard to be able to even construct a good sentence.
Sure.
So as it comes to me, I'm going to continue to work on my autobiography. I've written 7 of the 10 chapters. I'm wrestling with that situation because at first I started putting the chapters online and just giving it away for free. And then people were like, well, Jamie, there's probably like a major media deal coming your way. Why are you giving your story away? I mean, a lot of people hadn't read it. I think it had less than 1,000 views.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and pulled it offline, and I'm just kind of sitting back waiting to see what happens with that. Sure. I get my government pensions. I don't really have a need for money. I'm very well taken care of. But my wife, on the other hand, she could use the money if a media deal were to come my way, because all the money dies with me basically, and she'll be left with nothing. Yeah. So after everything that she's been through, if somebody offers to buy my story, then money's hers.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Now, are you doing anything in the way of like activism, speaking out, like going to events for transgender situations or anything like that?
I have made myself available to, like one such group is Family Policy Alliance. This is getting me into some relationships where the LGBT community doesn't like me being affiliated with religious organizations or conservative organizations. But yeah, I have made myself available to speak with legislators, speak with school boards, whatever these folks need. I've offered help.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right on. Now, in speaking to the religious side of things, you touched on it briefly, but we didn't get too deeply into like your religious mindset, your thoughts on God or anything like that. Were you raised in a religious household, and have you had like religious thoughts about this experience, or where are you at with that?
So my upbringing consisted of like my father beating us as children to go to church.
Right.
And he didn't lead a good life. I mean, he wasn't an alcoholic or anything like that. But I wouldn't call him a very honest person either. I mean, I understand his motivations. I mean, he did what he did to feed the family. Yeah. But so it was like he was running around hooking and crooking all week and going to church on Sunday. Sure. So I didn't have a lot of respect for religion because of his behavior with that. And as a kid, I often thought, if there's really a God, why am I being sexually abused?
Right.
So I did, like I said, I had no real ties to religion as a child.
Sure.
In my situation now, I'm starting to realize the values of faith. I'm starting to realize, that there's definitely good work being done out here in the Christian communities about the things they're doing are focused on the family. Yeah. They do have a good orderly society in mind with their actions and their deeds and the ways they think the society should be ran. And I can't really find any fault on that. And that's why I've been gravitating towards becoming a part of what they're doing and embracing God. I admitted recently that I'm a child of God.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's heavy because, you seeking out validation, seeking out approval, running, not to get overly spiritual or Christianese or anything, but it's like, you're always looking for a place where you feel like you're right, where you feel like you've got yourself figured out. And I have my issues with Christianity. I am a Christian myself, but I've got some stuff in my background that my listeners know about, and it's like you eventually you come to this point where it's like, what else do you do? What else do you do? So that's a really cool story. I mean, go ahead.
Well, you have to do something.
Yeah.
So at this point in my life, this is like I don't want to do like the glass half empty thing, but
right.
like this is like a lot less harmful path for me to go down. Mm-hmm. And they're certainly offering me a lot of support.
Yeah.
So I'm like I said, somebody like me who has a compulsive personality, I need something to latch onto.
Sure.
And religion it can't be a bad thing at this point.
Yeah, and if when you're finally finding a group of people that accepts you with all the shit, all the things, all the stuff that you've gone through, and even the organizations and the as you put it, the cults and the groups of people that pulled you into their sect when you were in a vulnerable state. When you left that, they cast you aside and they said, "Get out of here." And now you're being taken in by the Christian community, regardless of all that stuff. So I think that's really powerful and really important to.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that very telling that it's like the church and AA, the door is always open.
Yeah.
They realize you have faults and they leave the door open for you to return.
Sure.
The LGBT community doesn't work like that.
Sure.
Yeah. You're either all in or you're out.
Absolutely. And we're getting a bit of a video interference here, but we'll see if it works itself out. Go Skype, come on. All right, but James, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Do you have any final thoughts, anything that you think that the people need to hear in addition to what you've already so generously given us for your time on this story and the topic and everything else?
I would just say, try to have compassion for these folks, but don't enable their delusions. You're not. It wasn't helping me. You're not helping them, and these parents need a lot of support. They're facing doctors and that want to turn them in and get their children taken away because they won't agree to these medical procedures. These are the folks who need help, not the delusional folks. The parents need help more than the trans folks right now.
Yeah.
That's what I've got to say on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, James, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you being open and honest and transparent with your story. I think it's really important, and keep doing what you're doing. Do you have anything that you want to promote or anything that you want to direct people to?
No, I'm good. I'm on Twitter. Everybody can find me. Okay. I mean, you punch me into Google at this point in my life is on the internet, so I'm easy to find.
Right on. Well, we'll do a little bit of bonus here for the patrons. If you guys want that, I'll tell you more about that after the interview. Mm-hmm. But James, again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to having you on again in the future, hopefully, and catching up with you and seeing where things go.
Yeah, and thank you for having me as well. And I look forward to be able to show up and say, "See, I didn't relapse. I'm okay."
Absolutely. Well, take care, James.
You too. All right, bye-bye.
Hey, guys, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I enjoyed it very much so. James is a very fascinating case, and he's an open book. He's what we're all about here. He thinks that he made a mistake in his life, and he's owning it. When I contacted him by email and asked him to come on the show, he responded and said, "Yeah, I'd be happy to do it. And just know that no question is off the table. So ask anything. I'm an open book, no matter how offensive. If it's offensive, then I probably deserve it." So he's the type of people that we're looking for for this show, because that's what we're all about here, is just being open and honest, raw, real humans. Ugliness, mistakes, and all the things that make some people commit suicide. It's fine. It's okay. Maybe you messed up. Maybe you made a mistake. We get confused sometimes. Mental disorders are a real thing. And I do believe that it is a mental disorder. I know that that's kind of a touchy subject. It's not something that should be offensive, because I still have ADHD, and I've had depression and all sorts of different problems, a lot of mental disorders, I'm sure, that have gone undiagnosed. Everybody has them in one way or another. Do you just allow yourself to chop off body parts because of a mental disorder? Do you allow yourself to starve yourself because when you look in the mirror, you see your body as fat, even though you are skin and bones? Do you look in the mirror and see something that isn't? That is, in my opinion, a mental disorder. And it's hard to see how you could come to a different conclusion. It sucks. It sucks if you have an unwell brain that sees yourself as different than what you truly are. If you can't accept reality, that sucks. And I feel sorry for you. It's very hard to go through. And it's not a phobia. It's not a fear. I'm not afraid of you. I call it a mental disorder because I care about you. And I want you to be the most mentally healthy and stable person that you can be, for your sake and for the sake of everyone around you, all your loved ones, all your friends and family, society in general. If you're not well, then you're not living your best. So there's that. It's not a mean thing. It just is. It just is. So anyway, let's do all the end of the show things. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, smash that like button. I'm sorry, maybe I'm getting old, but I hate it every time I hear somebody say that on YouTube. Smash that like button. It's just dumb. It's dumb. And I am old, so, kids will be kids. But go out and do the things that kids do. If smashing the like button, if me saying that gets you more likely to smash the buttons, then by all means, smash away. I don't care. But go do all the things that millennials do and get the word out about the show. Also, go join the Downers Club at patreon.com/The System Is Down, and you'll get bonus episodes of the show every week. And you'll get my extended conversation with James Shoop, where we talked about a couple other hot button topics, things that he touched on a little bit, like feminism, and we dug into abortion and a couple other things in there. So go get the bonus show right now at patreon.com/The System Is Down for as little as $5 per month. Also, go support the documentary that we're working on together, The Moon, the Myth, the Legend. Like I said at the beginning of the show, it's all about why people just get enraged when you do your extensive research and come to a different conclusion. If you have a reason to think the way that you do, good for you, and people shouldn't get mad at that. They should discuss it with you. Maybe they should, try and talk you out of a crazy idea. But if you have done all the research and come to a conclusion, even if that conclusion is that your mental disorder is a healthy thing, then you shouldn't be yelled at about it. I didn't yell at James about it, and I hope that James isn't yelling at other people who are in that state. All you can do is discuss, know why you believe what you believe, and maybe talk somebody out of a crazy decision. I think that there's a fair chance that man has not walked on the moon. I'm still open to it. I'm still in the research and development stages, but at this point, it's becoming painfully, I wouldn't say evident, but seems like a far-fetched idea that we landed on the moon with men. If you want to know more about that, you can go go support the show, It's early here. It's like 10:19 on Friday, which is early for me, so I apologize. The Moon, the Myth, the Legend is the name of the documentary. You can support it on Indiegogo. You can pre-order your copy now. I don't necessarily need money. This is not a cash grab or anything of that sort. I'm trying to... I can make all this stuff without money. It's basically just a way for you to pre-order, and this is not a money-making scheme by any stretch of the imagination. I set the goal as low as I possibly could on Indiegogo. We're almost there right now, so if you want to go help us finish that off, that'd be great. But the main reason I'm making it is because we live in a culture where you can't think differently. You can't be weird. You can't think outside of the box. You can't explore different ideas without people telling you that you're stupid and retarded. That's the way it is. You can't say, hey, I don't think that man has walked on the moon. Somebody will call you retarded, guarantee it. They'll jump to conclusions about you being a crazy conspiracy theorist or what have you when they have done zero research on the moon landings themselves. So it's a way for my children and your children, hopefully in the future, to discover and remember that it's okay to explore. Wonder is probably the whole meaning of our existence. Wonder and humbleness, just exploring the world together, is probably the whole entire meaning of our existence. So that's what it's all about. Indiegogo, or you can go to moonmythlegend.com and you can watch the trailer, see the cover art and all that stuff. So go check it out and support it if you feel like it. And if you don't, just do it anyway. So there's that. Also, go join the System is Down forum. Most of the guests that I have on the show are members of the forum. The forum is currently on Facebook, so you can join it by going to tsidpod.com/forum, or you can just go over to Facebook and type in the System is Down forum, ask to join, and if you look like a human, I'll let you in there right away. So go do that and join the conversations, be a part of this thing that we're doing together, and let's make 2019 a really fun, weird, eccentric year together. I think that's it. Is that it? What else? What else do we got going on? We might be starting a second show on our feed that is hosted by somebody else, and if you're in the forum, you probably already know what I'm talking about. But so go join the forum if you want to find out that. But I won't say too much there because it's still very much in the works, but things are moving and progressing rapidly, and I hope to be announcing that very soon. So lots of exciting things to come in the very near future. So keep an eye out, join the forum, and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. Leave us a nice review on iTunes, all that stuff, all those things. Those things that we don't really need to say because you already know them all. You know them. You don't even really need reminders. You just need to apply yourself. You just need to go click a button and do me a favor, do yourself a favor by helping this thing grow. Cost you nothing. Barely even costs you any amount of time. We're on all the platforms. Mine's Gab, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, YouTube, all the things. And if you find a platform that we're not on that you want us to be on, let me know because I'm just not familiar with it, but I will familiarize myself and get on there. So, additionally, you can email me at dan@tsidpod.com if you have any guest recommendations, if you have any topic recommendations, if you have any platform recommendations, dan@tsidpod.com. Drop me a line, I'll read it, and try to respond to it if I have time. So, that's that. I hope you've enjoyed this show. I hope it started out your week well. I hope that you are thoroughly and adequately triggered, not over-triggered, not triggered in a way that is not justified, but maybe just a little bit uncomfortable because that's what the show is about. It's about exploring uncomfortable ideas in a humble and civil manner and not yelling at people. So, thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it very, very much. Love you guys. And if you'll have me, of course, I'll be right back here in your little greedy ear canals first thing next Monday morning with some more uncomfortable conversations for you. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, and nothing in between, question everything, stay uncomfortable, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks.
This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.
Hey Downers, if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. But more importantly, go join the Downers Club at patreon.com/The System is Down because the evil wizards of YouTube almost never let us monetize anything on here. Thanks.